Welcome back. The Black Hawk helicopter that collided with a passenger jet near Washington, D.C. may have deviated from its approved flight path. The New York Times is reporting its, quote, final location indicated it was not on its approved route and flying higher above the ground as it traversed the busy airspace. The instructor pilot had 1,000 flying hours and was considered, quote, very experienced, while the co-pilot had 500 flying hours, said to be normal. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth weighed in on this yesterday. Watch.
The military does dangerous things. It does routine things on the regular basis. Tragically, last night, a mistake was made. And I think the president is right. There was some sort of an elevation issue that we have immediately begun investigating at the DOD and Army level. Army CID is on the ground investigating. Top-tier aviation assets inside the DOD are investigating, sir, to get to the bottom of it so that it does not happen again, because it's absolutely unacceptable.
Joining me now is the Punaro Group CEO and retired two-star Marine Corps General Arnold Punaro. General, thanks very much for being here. Give us your reaction.
Well, Maria, I think obviously the first reaction is just the heartbreak and sorrow over the loss of life. You read these stories about the people that were on the plane, about their loved ones. It's just so heartbreaking, and particularly if the tragedy could have been avoided. I think the Secretary of Defense has put steel on target there. He's not waiting around, certainly not for 18 months, for the National Transportation Safety Board to get to the facts and looking into what actually happened. I'd like to make a couple of points, though. You and I have been around a long time, and we know that early reports, including from prestigious print news media, can sometimes not be 100% accurate, so we need to get the facts. Number two, as he indicated, and one thing that nobody's really picked up on, that helicopter was on a continuity of government training flight. This is one of the most sacred and important, highly classified missions of our military, to basically keep our government functioning and operating in extremis. And so they weren't just on a joy flight. And maybe we ought to look at in the interim some restrictions on what can be done on a routine basis. But these Army warrant officers are some of the most experienced and highly trained pilots we have in our military. So I think we take a deep breath and not wait for 18 months. And the other thing I would do, particularly if the reports that one of the most busiest and congested airspaces in the country was understaffed, they need to staff up. And one of the things they could do is, we have military air traffic controllers all over the country. They could be called in to back up the FAA controllers while they build back up. So there's a lot that can be done right now. But before we start doing any finger pointings, let's wait and get all the facts.
Well, I mean, look, these are good ideas as the officials move forward on changing things. But I guess what I'm really getting at is all of this criticism of the FAA and air traffic control in the first place. I mean, we had Mike Boyd on yesterday, an expert in aviation, and he said that there were nearly 1,000 near misses going into this, even before this accident, that the FAA has, you know, inherent bureaucracy. It prevents critical systems upgrades. So what about that? Are we keeping up in terms of the upgrading that needs to be done in such an important role? And if not, why not?
Maria, it's a fundamental problem right now in these areas that are inherently governmental functions that only government can do. Government is too big, too slow, and too costly, and certainly the FAA is not kept up. And that's a legitimate criticism and one that needs to be fixed right away. And this is one of the things that's so encouraging as the incoming team comes in. They're disruptors. They're not going to be business as usual. They want to turn things around. They want to make government more efficient and effective. We need to start with these fundamental, inherently governmental functions that protect the safety of all Americans every day. And certainly the FAA is way behind the power curve.
I mean, you know, the FAA apparently has been broken for many years. And Mike Boyd yesterday said that the Biden administration tolerated it and just, you know, didn't do anything about it. But I want to move on to the intelligence part of the news. Trump's director of national intelligence nominee, Tulsi Gabbard, was grilled by Democrats and Republicans yesterday during her Senate confirmation hearing. She was asked her previous remarks on Edward Snowden. Watch this.
You consistently praise the actions of Edward Snowden, some who, I believe, jeopardized the security of our nation, and then, in an effort to flaunt that, fled to Russia. You even called Edward Snowden, and I quote here, a brave whistleblower. Do you still think Edward Snowden is brave?
Edward Snowden broke the law. I do not agree with or support with all of the information and intelligence that he released, nor the way in which he did it.
If confirmed, would you support or recommend a pardon or any kind of clemency for Edward Snowden?
My responsibility would be to ensure the security of our nation's secrets and would not take actions to advocate for any actions related to Snowden.
General, what is your reaction?
Well, Maria, I was at the Pentagon all day yesterday and most of this week, so I didn't see it in person. But based on the reports and based on the concerns I've heard expressed by both Republicans and Democrats on the committee, her answers on Snowden and also on the Pfizer surveillance, which is absolutely essential to protect our citizens, are very troubling. So I'm very concerned, but I'll tell you, I have immense trust in the chairman of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, Tom Cotton, and I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to what Chairman Cotton recommends in this area. But certainly Snowden had devastating adverse impacts on our ability to protect our citizens and know what our enemies are up to. And we certainly need to continue the Pfizer surveillance also, again, to protect our citizens here at home. So her answers are very troubling. But again, the chairman of that committee, Tom Cotton, is a no-nonsense person. And he's someone, if he decides that she should be confirmed, if she gets in there and doesn't perform as she should, he will be the first to stand up and say, move on.
All right, so you've got concerns. What about the rest of the cabinet, General? Marco Rubio for Secretary of State, and of course Kash Patel running the FBI, John Ratcliffe at the CIA. Will this group, do you believe, zero in on the real threats that this country faces, beginning, by the way, with communist China and its constant and consistent undermining of America?
Maria, I'm very confident and I'm very encouraged. Again, as I've said, I've been at the Pentagon all week, and I remember when Admiral Hyman Rickover first started the nuclear Navy, and when the Nautilus, first nuclear submarine, the Nautilus, got underway, he said, underway on nuclear power. If you go over into the Pentagon today with Secretary Headquartered at the helm, they're underway on nuclear power. Our Defense Department is surging to the borders. They're getting ready to set up the Guantanamo migrant camp. All these things. And so I see that across the board with these common sense people that are coming in. Doug Collins is waiting on his Senate floor vote. He's going to get a very strong bipartisan vote. Wright for the energy, he's going to get a very strong bipartisan vote. A couple of the others will be a little bit closer. But I think bringing this kind of common sense and no business as usual to government is something that's long overdue.
All right, we will leave it there, and we'll be watching. General, good to see you, sir. Thank you. General Arnold Punaro joining us. And to you. Stay with us.